Ace Attorney Investigations 2 was first released in Japan in 2011 for the Nintendo DS. Since then, fans have been waiting for the sequel to come to America, but it never did. At least not on the DS. It was only first officially translated 13 years after release as part of the Ace Attorney Investigations collection, released for Steam, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. Though in 2014, a full patch was released for the DS by a GBA temp user named Aaron, translating the game into English. But since it wasn't officially sanctioned by Capcom, the translated names in the fan-made patch would not be the ones used once the game was officially translated. I'm sure most people have made videos about this already, but I want to go through all the names in both the fan-made and official English translations and see which ones I like more. This will be character names, episode names, and other miscellaneous names that appear throughout the game, just as long as they had been translated from the original Japanese script. Now, for those who haven't played through the entire game in English, whether official or fan-made, there will be spoilers. Let's start with the main cast. Of course, you have Miles Edgeworth, Dick Gumshoe, Kay Faraday, Franziska von Karma, Shilong Lang. Pretty much every character who previously appeared in an Ace Attorney game naturally has their name unchanged, even in the fan-made version, as, well, they already previously made an appearance. So let's start with a new character. This one's a defense attorney who previously worked under Edgeworth's father before his untimely death. In the fan-translated version, he is called Raymond Shields. Ray for short sounds like a ray of sunshine, and Shields is pretty much what lawyers do. They defend their clients as a shield. I think it's a pretty cool name, though the official name is a bit more on the nose and going for a pun. Capcom calls him Eddie Fender, as in a defender. Now, let's be clear on something. My first real exposure to Investigations 2 is through the Investigations collection. I was a little aware beforehand of a little of what the fan-made translation had to offer, but I never bothered playing it until it got its official translation. So throughout my life, I will always be referring to the characters by their official names provided to them by Capcom. That doesn't mean I have to prefer the official names the whole way through, and this is one of those examples. Most of it has to do with trying not to let bias towards the official version take over too much. So round 1 goes to the fans with Raymond Shields. The next two characters are a representative of the prosecutorial committee and a rival prosecutor that said committee wants to replace Edgeworth. In the fan-made version, the representative is Justine Courtney. The whole thing is that this character is also a judge, so the name fits two elements about her profession: justice and the court. You could argue the same with the official name, Verity Gavel. Her first name means the same as Justine, and her last name refers to the gavel, a tool judges use in most countries to keep the courtroom in order. Justine Courtney seems a bit too on the nose, so I'm going with the official translation. Now, the rival prosecutor, the Ace Attorney community, had a pretty interesting name for him before the official translation was released, that being Sebastian de Best. De Best is a name I can get behind. Sebastian? Well, I suppose it could be in reference to the baton he waves around like an orchestra conductor, perhaps like Johann Sebastian Bach? That's an interesting choice, but here's what Capcom had in mind, which really ties a lot more into his personality: Eustace Winter. If you've read the Narnia books, you probably know about the character Eustace Scrubb, who almost deserved that name. It sounds like Useless Scrub. Same here, Useless Winter, or maybe Useless Whiner. Either way, there's a lot more jokes to be made with Eustace Winter than Sebastian de Best, so the point goes to Capcom. Even the name of the prosecutorial committee is different between the two versions. You wouldn't think that, but get this. The fan-translated version calls it the Prosecutorial Investigation Committee, or PIC, and the official version calls it the Committee for Prosecutorial Excellence. The whole deal with them, judging by the interactions with Edgeworth, seems to be about investigating a prosecutor's behavior, not so much their excellence. After all, when Edgeworth and Gavel first meet, while explaining why Eustace is to investigate the murder at the prison instead of Edgeworth, Gavel talks about how Edgeworth performed an unsanctioned investigation in a presidential seaplane from overseas. So, point goes to the fans for their name. Lastly, let's talk about a central gimmick that's introduced in this game. The goal with this one is to extract information from potential witnesses by engaging in verbal combat as though the two of you are playing a game of chess. It's called Logic Chess in the original version and Mind Chess in the official translation. The name is a reference to a mental struggle between Edgeworth and his opponent in an attempt to learn more about the case. Capcom's official name is much more direct in naming this struggle. It truly is a battle of the mind. Logic does come into it, but mind chess really does have a nicer ring to it. Point goes to Capcom for the name of this gimmick. Now that we got the main cast out of the way, let's go through everything in each episode and see how they're named. First is Turnabout Trigger, or as it's called in the fan version, Turnabout Target? I wonder why Capcom didn't just go with that. It fits the plot better. The premise is that you're investigating the attempted assassination of a foreign president who came to visit the United States to give a big speech. Speaking of the president, his name is mostly unchanged between the two versions. The official version is Wang, and the other is Huang. So basically, you can either just use a W sound or try to sound like Hank Hill.
Will you look at what your niece has done?
What?
I tell you what.
Same can't be said for his two bodyguards, however. His bodyguards were given names that reflect two chess pieces, the Rook and the Knight. In the fan-made translation, they were called Ethan Rook and Horace Knightley, while in the official translation, their names were Bastion Rook and Bronco Knight. Capcom sure didn't waste their time with the last names, did they? It was a pretty tough call. The fan-made version did more than just use the names of the chess pieces as their last names, but Capcom I felt did pretty well on completing the names without looking too stupid. Bronco Knight? Can't pass that up. Bastion Rook? Well, all they did in the fan-made version was add an E to the man's last name, and honestly, I think Bastion is a better name than Ethan, so Capcom it is on both counts. Lastly, for this episode, a young reporter that had been tricked into cooperating with the culprit's staged assassination. Her manner of speech may remind you of a certain southern journalist from the mainline series, though that's only because she's this kid's mentor, which we don't learn until later. In the fan-made translation, her name is Nicole Swift. I guess Swift could work decently for her impulsive personality, but once again, Capcom wanted to be clever with the names. Their name for the character is Tabby Lloyd. Get it? As in tabloid? Why would you want any other name? Point to Capcom. What's the score so far? 3.5 for the fans, 6.5 for Capcom. So Capcom has a pretty decent lead so far, but let's press ahead. The next episode is the Captive Turnabout, or the fan-made version, the Imprisoned Turnabout. It means the same thing either way. The culprit from the previous episode is found dead in prison, even though he should be in detention awaiting trial. The first prisoner you question regarding the incident is a former boxer who in the fan-translated version is called Jailbird. It's a pretty on-the-nose pun on Jailbird. I'm much more attached to his official name, Rocco Carcerato. Rocco reminds me of the Rocky film series, and Carcerato is an Italian word that means prisoner or inmate. Where do you think the term incarceration came from? The full name is Italian, which I guess is a further connection to the Italian stallion. Speaking of which, there's also the matter of the polar bear that accompanies him. I much prefer the fan-made name Rocky to have applied to him. Meanwhile, the official name is simply Teddy. Pretty generic. Now, what about the suspect in the murder? He claims to have been best friends with the victim, though it would turn out that hadn't been the case for 18 years. Nowadays, he works as an animal tamer for the Very Big Circus. Yes, the very same circus from Turnabout Big Top. The character's name in the fan-translated version is Simon Keys, which may sound like Shy Monkeys to reflect his facade, and actually, the name makes a lot more sense once you see his true nature. It sounds like a corruption of Simon Says. You could sort of argue the same for his official name, Simeon Saint. Simeon is pronounced the same as Simeon, as in primates. You know, monkeys. Meanwhile, Saint is an oxymoron relating to his facade. I like this name more for its alliteration and its clever oxymoronic last name. Next is the Prison Warden. The fan-translated version called her Patricia Rowland, even if Capcom looked to the fan-made version for inspiration, which they obviously didn't. I wouldn't say they'd be against using another pun for patrol. They've just done it twice in the series already, once in Spirit of Justice with Patrol, and again in The Great Ace Attorney with Patricia and Rolly Beat. It's just that a patrol pun sounds like it would be more fitting for a security guard or police officer than a prison warden. In the official version, they called her Fifi Lagarde. Her first name fits her sweet exterior, and Lagarde lets you know how seriously she takes her job. Point goes to Capcom there. The last character for this episode is a blind assassin and his dog. Before he was held in maximum security, this assassin made his presence known through the sound of his bells, the last sound his victims would ever hear. In the fan-made translation, he was called Suran Dogan. Suran is an Arabic word that means wolf, as well as the name of the assassin that killed US Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and Dogan pretty much ties into his dog. But I'm more drawn to the official name, Bodhidharma Canis. It sounds like bodily harm or body harmer, and Canis is obviously for canine. The full name just sounds more threatening. Same goes for the dog. He's called Anubis in the fan-made version in reference to the ancient Egyptian god of funerary rites, but the official name is Helmut, which sounds like Hellmutt, like Hellhound. Both points go to Capcom. Finally, I'm going to address another gimmick. It's a video analyzing device that allows you to take a closer look at any video footage you come across during the game. The only reason I didn't bring this up earlier is because unlike Mind Chess, you only use this gimmick twice. This is the first. This contraption is called Mr. Analysis, the fan-made version, but the official translation is called Lil V. That sounds like the name of a crappy rapper, or a rapper. So I'm gonna go with Mr. Analysis. Alright, with that, here's the total score now. 6 for the fans, 12 for Capcom. So Capcom's got twice the score, meaning they're still in the lead. Moving on, we have Turnabout Legacy, known as the Inherited Turnabout in the fan-made version. They're both fitting titles, as Edgeworth is carrying on his father's legacy by solving his final case, which he inherited by way of being truly introduced to the finer details by Fender. Hard choice, but I'll just go with Turnabout Legacy for this. The case is a murder that was allegedly committed at his own mansion by one of the hosts for a children's musical culinary show. A quick note, the show's two main elements are baking and song and dance. Yet the fan-translated name is Piece of Cake, which fits the culinary theme but not the song and dance. But don't worry, when the fans drop the ball, Capcom usually picks it up. They fixed that up by calling the show Bacon Bop. Heck yeah. Now for the two hosts. What's funny is that while the fan-translated names go for a culinary theme, the official names are more related to dance. In the fan-made version, their names were Jeff Masters and Catherine Hall. Catherine Hall was a pun I needed to look up. It sounds like catering hall. Jeff Masters, on the other hand, was easy enough to figure out, especially when he has the nickname Master Jeff. The official names, on the other hand, are Samson Tangaroa and Judy Bound. Tangaroa refers to tango, and while Judy Bound sounds more like duty bound, it's the bound part of her name that relates to dancing. I feel like the host names should each relate to one element, so 1 point for both versions. For the culinary theme, I'll go Jeff Masters, leaving the dancing theme to Judy Bound. Now, what about the contestants? First is the murder victim, who also gained fame as a sculptor in France under an alias. His real name in the fan-made version is Isaac Dover, a pun on iced over, though his sculptor alias is Pierre Hoquet. That sounds like perroquet, the French word for parrot. In the official version, his real name is Artie Frost, which sounds like defrost, and his sculptor alias is Paul Helique. It's nothing special, it's just an alternate spelling of the Japanese name, which is a play on asking for trouble or digging one's own grave. Point goes to the fan-made version on both counts. Now, his killer is an interesting case. He's called Dane Gustavia in the fan-made version, but is given the name Carmelo Gusto in the official version. I think Capcom gave it the better deal with a name that sounds like caramel, and Gusto really accentuates his enthusiasm for his craft, especially considering he went to another country to practice his sense of design. Next on the list is a British pharmacist who works for the Tangaroa group and enters the contest pretending to be a confectioner to retrieve the ultimate cookbook, which was used as a prize in the confectionery contest against the company's wishes. And, well, this is an interesting case. Much like with President Dijun Wang, there's barely any difference in name between the two. In the fan-made version, she's named Delicious Scones, and in the official version, she's named Delicious Scone. The difference is that the last name is plural in the fan-made translation, but the pun is pretty much the same, Delicious Scones. Scones are a traditional British baked treat, but should it be singular or plural? You know what, I'll let you decide. Oh, did I say Ultimate Cookbook? True, its real name is Angel's Cookbook, but apparently the fan-made translation is called Angel's Recipe. Yeah, recipe as in singular, except the book contained multiple recipes, so I'm going with Capcom on that front. The mansion itself was once Samson Tangaroa's mansion before his arrest, and was then turned into an art gallery by Judy Bound once she earned enough money to buy it. The goal was to depict replicas of and complete Paul Helique's final works, which were ice sculptures depicting the 12 zodiac signs. So naturally, the place is called Zodiac Hall. There are 4 rooms in the gallery, each named after the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The fan-made version refers to these different rooms as palaces, which sounds grand and all, but let's compare them to the official version. Calling them wings makes it a bit more sense because the art gallery itself could easily be seen as a palace. Like a palace within a palace? That's a weird thing to say. Calling them wings just feels more right. Very briefly, I'll want to touch upon the chemicals used to create poisonous gas for the culprit. It's done by mixing two chemicals, both of which have very fictional names, though likely based on real chemicals that, when mixed together, really would be this dangerous. The first is a benign chemical often found in things like paint or dish soap. The second is a more dangerous chemical that's not available to the general public and is a signature ingredient for a rat poison. They pretty much had to make names up so there could be a joke where Eustace misunderstood the medical examiner's diagnosis and only names one of the chemicals used. Unfortunately, the fan-translated version isn't all that clever about it. The chemicals are referred to as normalium and fatalium. All you did was add lium to the end of the words normal and fatal. The official names were a little better, ubiquium and asphyxian. I vote Capcom for this one, and also for the rat poison created from the dangerous chemical. Megatoxin X in the fan-made version, Infesticide Ultra in the official version. Lastly, this one regards a police detective loyal to Von Karma that squeezed a confession out of Samson Tangaroa. The fan-translated name is a little weird. Rip Lacer sounds like Replacer, which is basically how it went both ways. He was replaced by Terrell Bad, and later replaced him when he was taken off the case. I'm more to the official name, Ian Seidman. It sounds like Inside Man, perfectly describing his loyalty to Von Karma. Seems like Turnabout Legacy in general is a big win for Capcom. To tally the points now, that's 9.5 points for the fans and 20.5 points for Capcom. Boy, have Capcom shot way further ahead. Let's see if they can keep it up, or maybe the fans will pass them. Moving on to Episode 4, A Turnabout Forsaken, though I think the fan-translated name, The Forgotten Turnabout, fits the plot more closely. Kay takes a nasty fall and contracts amnesia, and while Ledra is trying to help her recover her memory, Kay is accused of murder. Let's start with the building where all the trouble took place. It's the same building where the prosecutorial committee's hearing against Edgeworth was to take place. In the fan-made version, it was called the Grand Tower. Nothing ultra fancy, but get a load of what Capcom came up with. In the official translation, it's called the Big Building. Okay, I'll stick with Grand Tower. Moving on, we have the nurse that brought Kay into Edgeworth's office. Her name is Kara Jensen in the fan-made version, which sounds like caring and also very sneakily injection. In the official release, she's called Florence Needler. Her first name is in reference to Florence Nightingale, a 19th century nurse known for having pioneered modern nursing, and her last name is, well, a needle. You know what, they got me with the injection pun, so point to the fan-made version. However, we can't forget about her grandma. In the fan-made version, her name is Bonnie Young. I get the irony, but I'm going to give a point to Capcom for Hilda Hertz. I will, however, miss the name Dai Young Hospital as opposed to Hertz Hospital. Nah, Dai Young Hospital sounds about as on the nose as a murder victim named Dead Man. So, what about the villain of this episode? The chairman of the prosecutorial committee, who also turns out to be the rival prosecutor's father. His name in the fan-made version is Blaze DeBest, possibly in reference to his lighter that he often uses. It's most prominent in his damage animations and breakdown. You can even leave the first name as an initial to read it as B DeBest. But since his son's name is Eustace Winter in the official translation, that joke can't be made, so instead he's called Excelsius Winter, which really boasts his superiority. I don't know about you, but Blaze DeBest just rings a lot of bells to me, so I'll vote on that. Then again, I vote in favor of Eustace Winter, meaning if I were to go by fan-made names, which I won't be doing, I'll have to call the father Blaze Winter. Now for the murder victim, which is actually transitioning over to the final episode in the game, Turnabout for the Ages, or in the fan-translated version, The Grand Turnabout. For the Ages makes it sound like a battle not to be missed, and that's precisely what this is. It sounds a lot more exciting, so I'll give that point to Capcom. Now, the murder victim in A Turnabout Forsaken has a connection with the murder victim from an as-yet unsettled 12-year-old case. The names of the two are references to nursery rhymes, both of which involve falling or tumbling. It's Jack and Jill in the fan-translated version with Jill Crane and Jack Cameron. In the official version, it's Ring Around the Rosie with Rosie Ringer and Al Falldown. Both of these nursery rhymes work just fine for what they're trying to establish. One of the central elements in Turnabout for the Ages is that a dead body was discovered on the set of a monster movie. It's a Godzilla-esque film featuring a mutated giant bull as a monster. With the fan-translated version, they embraced the crap out of the Godzilla influence by calling him Moozilla. That sounds way too ridiculous, so I'd rather stick with the official name, Tarasaurus. Still sounds ridiculous, but it's a heck of a lot more clever. Might as well also mention the star, 13-year-old child actor who plays a character that can communicate telepathically with the monster by drinking milk. This kid's name is John Marsh in the fan-made translation. Yeah, not doing me any favors, even if the name John belongs to the older brother of the US Senator Sirhan assassinated, much like how Cadiz killed the kid's biological father 12 years back. Anyway, the official translation named him Sean Fenn as a riff off of the actor Sean Penn, who starred in a biopic called Milk. So there's the milk connection as far as the English language is concerned. I like that pun, so that's what I'm going to go with. Well, I went through all the name differences between the fan-made translation and the official translation, all in English, obviously, but anyway, I hope I didn't miss any. Oh yeah, the title! The fan-made title is an interesting one. It could simply be Ace Attorney Investigations Miles Edgeworth 2, or to tie in with how the main series is titled, Ace Attorney Investigations Miles Edgeworth Prosecutor's Path. It does tie in with the plot of the game, but I'm more to the official title, Ace Attorney Investigations 2 Prosecutor's Gambit. It fits the chess theme that the game goes for. The final tally is 15 points for the fans and 29 points for Capcom. This means, while not exactly a clean sweep, Capcom's official translation, as far as names go, wins. I might actually expose myself to the fan-made translation for a full exposure and give a real comparison, but I don't expect much. At least not in comparison to the official Capcom release. I would love to hear your personal thoughts in the comments below though. What do you think of the Capcom names compared to the fan-made names? Thanks for watching.